As you work in Google Sheets, you may find that you have just a really large spreadsheet. It goes down quite a ways, it goes across quite a ways, and you would like to be able to go to the right for several columns and still be able to see, say, the first column, so that you can really relate what you are seeing on the right to what you're seeing on the left. Sometimes it's really hard to tell whose data you're looking at if you have to scroll over too far or maybe down too far. It's not at all uncommon to have, especially in a large spreadsheet, several columns of the same kinds of numbers, and only the column headings really help you keep track of what kind of numbers you're seeing. Well, if you scroll down too far and can't see those column headings, then those numbers start looking even more alike, and it becomes really hard to understand what your data is all about. So hi, I'm Terry, one of the Consumer Technology Specialists for Mid-Continent Public Library, and today we are going to explore Google Sheets and freeze panes. As we look at our spreadsheet today, we can see that it is some sort of a number of potential customers that have been contacted, and it could even be cold calls that we're trying to keep track of for every day as we go through. And this first column simply has the beginning of each week, and then we fill in the numbers as we keep track. Now, the only thing about this is it's a year's worth of information, so as we scroll down, you'll notice that while I still have on the left the date for the beginning of the week, I have totally lost the column headings. Now, again, this is pretty evident because it's a fairly small spreadsheet and it's very pointed in what it is trying to look at. But with a really large spreadsheet, once you lose those column headings, if you have similar numbers, it becomes very confusing what is what and what represents what. And so one of the ways that you can fix this dilemma is by using freeze panes. Now, in Google Sheets, you have several options with freeze panes, and they all come down to going up to the menu bar to the third choice to view. And then it depends on where you click as to what happens. So, for example, let's say that I click in A4 just to get us started, and I go to view, and my second choice here is freeze. And it says, well, you could say, I don't want to freeze any rows. Well, that's kind of where we are now. What if I want to freeze one row? Well, let's click on that. And we get this separator gray line, kind of thick gray line, between row 1 and row 2. Well, let's scroll down and see what happens. So as I scroll down, I've already lost the column headings, but I have kept my title in row 1. Well, let's go back up a little bit here, because I think while we're onto something, this isn't the answer. Well, let's go to view, and we'll go to freeze, and it says we could freeze 2 rows. Well, what does that look like? Well, that gray line moves between rows 2 and 3. So as I scroll down, now I simply have a title with some space between it and the numbers that are in the spreadsheet. So close, but still not quite right. Well, let's go back up, and then let's go to view and freeze, and this time it says up to row 4. Well, row 4 is where I clicked. So let's look at that. So now that line has moved below where I clicked. It has kept my column headings, that's great, but it's also kept that row where I clicked. I think now I've got the answer. It's not quite what I'd anticipated, so let's click on View, and let's click on Freeze, but this time let's just say no rows for a second. Because we can see that when it said freeze one row, it did that. freeze 2 rows, it did that. When I clicked on row 4, it froze right at the bottom of row 4. What I want to do really is freeze below row 3. So let's click on row 3, although I didn't see that as an option, but let's see what happens. Let's go to View, Freeze. Oh, now my options are 1 row, 2 rows, or up to row 3. Let's click on that. And now we have that gray line where we wanted it, which is below 3. So what it means is I can scroll down, I can keep my column headings, and it is freezing rows 1, 2, and 3. So kind of instead of up to, it's really down through row 3. And as you can see, that can be very helpful as you look at the week and then the different days. Well, let's go back up to the top because that was freezing the rows, but we also had an option of freezing columns. Let's first of all go to View and say no rows. That helps a lot. That way we can get back up to the top. Let's keep our selection at A3 and let's go to View and Freeze, and it says 1 column, but there's a problem. So this is something that, especially if you're trying to freeze columns, but you have a title on your spreadsheet or any place where you might have some merged cells, you can't also freeze. So we'll click OK. And then what we're going to do is come up to A1, and we're going to go to Format. And where it says Merge Cells, we're going to say Unmerge. Now we can come down to A3, go to View, and where it says Freeze, we'll say, well, let's go with 1 column. And now we get a vertical gray line to the right of column A. And then as we scroll to the right, we can go clear out past Friday if we want to. But the nice thing is we can see the week, no matter how often we scroll over to the right. And with huge spreadsheets, this becomes a big deal because lots of times you want to be able to relate what is on the right with some very important information, identifying information on the left. Lots of times, the row headings have, say, a person's name, or there's an address, or there's an employee number, or maybe it's a combination of several things. Maybe it's the employee number and the person's name. And you want to be able to see all of that as you scroll back and forth from the left to the right. So being able to scroll and relate the right part of the spreadsheet to the left part of the spreadsheet is just extremely important. Well, that was 1 column. Let's see what else we can do. Let's go to View and Freeze. Well, let's try 2 columns. And now we get that gray mark between columns B and C. And so as we scroll to the right, we can see that we have week of and Monday that never move, but it's the other days of the week that we can scroll back and forth. Well, let's go back one more time, and let's go to View, and of course, let's just say no columns, because it could be that I not only want to freeze a column or a row, but maybe I want to freeze columns and rows. So not only will I see weekdays, but I would also see column A. Now that we've looked at how freezing works, we have a pretty good idea that if we click in A3 and go to View and Freeze, we should be able to say up to row 3, which basically means rows 1, 2, and 3. We get that gray line. And then we can go back to View and Freeze, and we can also say that we want to freeze column A. Now, isn't this intriguing? Because now I can scroll down if I want to, but I can also scroll to the right and find precisely what I am looking for when I freeze both rows and columns. Freeze Panes is a wonderful tool. To learn even more, be sure to go to mymcpl.org/online learning for such great resources as Universal Class, Learning Express Library, LinkedIn Learning, and Udemy Business. We also premiere videos every Wednesday and Friday at 1 o'clock. If you miss a video premiere, you'll still be able to find it later when it's convenient for you. You can find us on Facebook at MCPL 360, and you can find us on YouTube by going to our MCPL MO channel.